SMTN.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network Link258. Joining me on this special podcast, I don't even think I said my own name, that's how you know it's been late into a Friday. I'm your host, Spencer Presley, but joining me on this kingful, royalty-filled, not SMT-filled discussion podcast are two special co-hosts. My first co-host is someone I'm glad I could finally talk to outside of a Twitter space, Cameron Hawkins. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I am fantastic. Are you ready to wade through the IGN comment section tonight for your Monark review?
Nope.
And also someone who will probably not be in the IGN comment section is my good friend Kuro, who's going to be in his own comment section because he's got his own channel, the Midnight Channel, which you probably may remember him from because I think you were on this maybe 9,000 years ago. I don't even remember the last time you were on the podcast. But yeah. Kuro, how have you been?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm already in the comment sections of IGN. I'm already looking at that.
You have to take a shot every time somebody says something nice about the game's graphics and the reviewer's voice, because it happens every time. So, we are here, in case you didn't know, happy Monarch release day, unless you're a super awesome SMTN Patreon producer who's listening to this early. But this episode is going live on Monarch release day, otherwise known as Please God, Please Somebody Play Something That's Not Elden Ring before Elden Ring comes out, because then it's going to suck up all the sales of the video game industry, at least probably for 2 or 3 weeks. So I figured, since all three of us reviewed Monarch, and Monarch is very, very intrinsically tied to original SMT developers, definitely is not a Shin Megami Tensei game at all, as most of us discovered last year with the demo, and probably a lot more people figured out once the English demo dropped last month. But yeah, figured it's kind of intrinsically it's intrinsically tied to the series. I've been playing it. I really want to talk about it. I've not really had a chance to honestly look at almost anyone else's reviews because I was busy doing my own review and trying to get Dynasty Warriors 9 out of my palette as quickly as humanly possible. So I'm legitimately super excited to talk about this with the both of you because I did a video, which you can check out. All of our videos and reviews will be linked in the comments below, or linked in the podcast description below, so you can all check them out. But I did a basically 25 plus hour impression video, and was like, I shouldn't love this game because it's got a lot of warts on it, but I really, really like this game for a lot of different reasons that will most likely get into the good and the bad. But Cam, because your name is alphabetically first, I will let you go first. What the heck was reviewing Monarch like for you?
It was... So, I actually went to IGN to ask them if I could review it. Because I was already going to get the game when it launched. And I recently have gotten into the Legend of Heroes series, and that is a series that a lot of JRPG folk, at least I wouldn't even say JRPG folk, but even just people in the gaming industry that do know about games and follow games in a real way. A lot of people haven't heard of this series, or I think that, and I think that from the games that I have played, I've played 4 of the 9 so far. I think that is a game that should be in the conversation with Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, all those iconic JRPG franchises, and it's not. And part of that is just due to localization things, and it's not as accessible. But it's one of those things where, yeah, it's not a triple A, type JRPG. That series, I wouldn't categorize it as such. And so like when I like thought about Monarch, I'm like, I'm looking forward to this game. It looks cool, and I was just like, I think this will be a cool game to review for IGN because IGN more or less reviews all the popular games, the ones that are highly anticipated. And I thought maybe like this would be a really cool game for IGN to review and like be a nice like shout out to the folks like us who were looking forward to this game. And there are a few of us, but in the grand scheme of things, but there is an audience for it. And so I was just like, hey, like, can I review this game? They're like, sure. The review process was a little cumbersome for me because I was like working, like especially last week, I was like working 2 jobs. Like I would wake up I would start work at like 7 a.m., get home at 8 p.m., and I'm still like trying to review this game, which is like a 40+ hour JRPG, and which in my opinion felt much longer than that, and I don't think that because of how my work schedule was. I just think that game feels like a slog a lot of the time, and we'll get to that later. And I literally just finished the review today, and it's up on IGN now. And it feels like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulder. It felt very cumbersome. Not particularly like, and there are things that I do really like about this game. But overall, like, it has a lot of like just fundamental issues for me that kept me from enjoying it as much as I wanted to.
It's funny, like, even for someone like me who's really high on it, and I think both of you could agree, this is not a game you could just blindly recommend to someone to buy. Which, on one hand, that's kind of a detriment in terms of its overall quality, but then I kind of give it some forgiveness because they were at least smart enough in the West as well as in Japan to release a really meaty demo. Like, you can do that whole opening first act for free on pretty much every platform but PC, which is kind of a good way of, like, that's a good idea of, like, kind of, for the most part, what a majority of that game is really going to be like without obviously getting multiple party members or things like that. So I can definitely relate to you in terms of, like, oh my god, I feel like I've been playing this game forever, and then I would look at the time and be like, I have not been playing this game as long as it feels like.
I can agree with both of you. It felt that way.
So for you though, Kuro, so you put up your review, same thing as me when the embargo went up on a Wednesday. I'm a terrible friend and have not seen your review yet, so have you fully beaten it as well, correct?
Yeah, I did 2 playthroughs. The one playthrough and then, without spoilers, a second kind of half playthrough, if you will. It's really hard to explain without finishing the game once.
I mean, honestly, I think even playing the game, it's kind of confusing, because I hope both of you had the same feeling as me when you were playing the first opening part of the game. Like, when when Vanitas kept saying, Act 1, Act 1, Act 1, I'm like, how many... is this all the same act? Like, I'm like, is part 2 also this long?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had another friend who was reviewing it, and I asked him, I was just like, dude, how... Because he was ahead of me, like, the entire time. I'm like, dude, how much more of this game is there, man? And he like kept saying like, oh, you're almost... I'm like, dude, are you sure? Because it doesn't feel like it. And that game is it can be a lot.
That's why shout out to the PlayStation 5 Activity tab. While the game does nothing exceptional on PS5 with its features, I at least appreciate that you can just press the PS button. It'll let you know, hey dude, you're like halfway done though, don't worry. Like, that was the only saving grace once I finally finished all those, that I was like, okay, this isn't like as long as it like makes it seem like it's going to be, which is kind of in its favor. But like, so Kuro, for you, were you like kind of playing, because like we had codes for... God, it kind of bleeds together, like, what, like 2 weeks almost before? Like, we got it, like, early February.
Yeah, like 2 weeks.
So for you, did you enjoy your time? Did it feel like a slog? Like, what was the whole process for doing the review on your end?
So, kind of a personal time, I guess. My family got COVID the week that I got that review code. So I was working from home, and I don't know if you guys work from home. It makes gaming a lot easier.
That is very true.
So that's pretty much what I did. I was working and playing Monarch in my free time, in between phone calls and everything. I just let the game. So with the first like 30 hours of the game, like I was telling you guys off screen, they were really enjoyable because I wasn't really like actively like. There's some battles where you don't really need to be 100% on your game. It's just kind of the grind, if you will. Um, but after that 30-hour mark, I really felt like the game started to really drag. Started to ask a lot of me to really pay attention, and the puzzles certainly didn't help. There's a lot of puzzles in this game,
The
and
puzzles suck. The puzzles suck.
yeah.
I'm like so interested in like terms of this. So I'm now at this point. I'm really close to the end. I'm like, I think I maybe got like maybe 5 or so. I know it's less than 10 hours left. I'm very close to the end, but like I've been told since like people were playing this game for review. Out of all my friends, everyone was like, "I hate the puzzles. I hate the puzzles. I hate the puzzles," and I still haven't hit that point yet. And what's really funny is, like, actually, in Cam, like, to go back to when you DM'd me about this, I kept meaning to ask you. When you asked me that first puzzle you were stuck on, is that the one in the opening act where you're either doing the locker or to get into the room where you have to have the ID?
I have to look back at our IGN.
No, that's okay. But like the amount of times friends who were reviewing this were like, "Oh my god, dude, I can't figure out this puzzle," and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's that. It's that." Like the one that I got asked on the most. I don't know if this one stumped you all. The first computer quiz puzzle of you have to get the guy's ID code.
You're trapped in the room, right?
No. This one's
Right.
actually before then. This is when in the club building you have to learn the login and then figure out the
So
password.
you went to the club building first, though. That's
Oh.
why it was first for you.
That
Because
is true.
remember,
Yeah.
at the first act, you can go. So for me, I got Ryotaro first. After Nozomi, obviously. Nozomi is the first one you get always. I got Ryotaro, I got Kokoro, and then I got Shinya.
Yeah, so, like, I gotta say, I was legitimately impressed that when you did that first opening area, how it divvies up, and, like, when it's like, hey, there's a thing here, here, and here, where do you want to go in the school? I was like, it's clearly going to be level gated, right? Because, like, not a lot of RPGs really do this, even on, like, a tinier scale like Monarch, but I legitimately, like, had to give them big credits for being like, hey, you can do this in any order you want, and I checked out all the characters, and I was like, that's like really cool, because it's like, it's nice to just like, hey, which character or which storyline do you want to do first? Like for me, I know I did Kokoro first, and it was literally just because I really wanted to see what was in the library, and then hilariously didn't get to go in the library yet. But yeah, that whole like kind of choose your like adventure path of it, I thought was a really nice kind of like way to like start. Like, Kuro, who did you start out with after you left the first building?
I think it's the same as Shock. Same thing. Exact same playthrough.
As me.
Yeah, exactly same. Now, I will say, I think it only works on the first act. I don't think it works in the second act. Again, as I mentioned before, you do have to do a few playthroughs if you want to get the full story. So,
I at least I feel like the game, it's weird because like obviously once you beat it, I'm aware like it's easy to get back to it. I feel like the game, once you finish that first act, it doesn't actually stress the importance of what you're doing, because I remember when I got to the point of like, hey, you have all the party members together now, and it's like, cool, I can get rid of these chess pieces, and I can get rid of the pawns, and I was figuring I was going to have a party of all of the pact bearers and stuff, and there's like, nope, you still only get one at a time, like you have a dedicated buddy, and I was like, I thought that was very like weirdly like described in terms of it, because it felt like you should be able to do it, because at that point, and most people probably don't even know this, the only way early on, if you want to fight with all of the pact bearers in one battle, is you have to do it in the true student council room.
Yeah, you have to grind, and you have to basically repeat older battles.
Mm-hmm. Which I was curious, how did you all feel about the amount of battles? Because like was honestly surprised. Like, I feel like for an RPG, obviously there are times where you'll go back and have to do it unless you're playing on like casual mode. This has like probably got to be one of the least battlefield RPGs I've ever played. Like, there's very little actual battles.
Yeah, from a story perspective, they're far and few between. But like, I mean, there were parts where I was sitting here for hours just repeating the same battle just to get the spirit to grind up my characters, and so it was one of those.
That's deceptive. It feels like there's not a lot of battles, but it's only to your detriment.
I felt like I was missing something. And please make fun of me if this was apparent to both of you. When I eventually hit that point in my skill tree of like, why did everything go from double digits to 4 digits to level up stuff? And I'm like, what do I do with all these soul points? I'm like, this is so dumb. And then I realized, oh, you can just level up them to level 2, 3, 4, or 5 to make them more powerful, and that will still increase your overall stats for everything. It was very weird of like, the skill trees are like deceptively simple because of how much you have to double up on skills.
Yeah, I agree. It is interesting because it's also a currency. I think that's also one thing that people should know before they spend all their souls money in healing items and supplies. Do not do that. You will pick up enough if you grind.
I was gonna say I think I bought and sold something once because I was wondering if it was a trophy, and I never did it again. Like, the whole like store element was so unnecessary.
Yeah, the only thing is selling stuff. You can sell all the extra chess pieces, things, and you get a lot of souls out of those.
That's true.
Yeah,
I haven't sold any of those.
Yeah, definitely go back and sell your vessels. I mean, you don't get a whole lot, but like it's worth doing still. And I wouldn't fully agree with the store items though, because like it really just depends on what order of fiends you get, right? Because like the Pride Fiend focuses on healing, but if you don't get the Pride Fiend, you know, like until like one of the last ones.
Oh, that's true. That was literally like the first one I got in it. So that makes sense why. Because before I got her, it was just like constantly having to eat those small recoveries, which went away fast.
So the order you get is based off of like what your next highest attribute is on your ego. So like I started with gluttony because that's what I got highest on the test that you take in the beginning. But then after that, I got envy, and then I got pride, and then I got wrath. You know, and so like, and then I think like after that was lust. So it's like one of those things where, you know, everyone's, and that's one of the things I think is kind of cool about the game is that, you know, your playthrough will always be different from someone else's, whether it be the order you choose to go and recruit the people in the first act, or you know, the order of which you get your fiends.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting things of like explaining to people, and I've even been talking to it a bit of like, this game really does have such an interesting amount of depth in terms of how different your playthrough is, even though it's not necessarily affecting the story for most people. Like, I really appreciated the fact that this is one of those games, and I feel like it actually does this. I related this to Catherine. Like, when you would do those levels in Catherine and you would not really know what was the right or wrong answer, and you had those two choices, I think that this almost kind of takes that in an even more interesting way of, there's no wrong answers, really. You're getting a stat boost in some way or not, but, like, at least for me, there was never a time where I took a psychology test and it was like, oh god, I'm screwed. I didn't want that bonus or whatever. Like, they all felt like interesting, actual, like, psychological questions that were still adding to my overall stats.
So, I am a psychology major, and there are some things that are actually the right, quote, answer. And I guess you could say I cheated on some of them, because there are some of them that are actually based on some psychological experiments. And there was one, and I literally followed through, and I got like the most I could possibly get out of that. And the game actually told me that I got the better answer of that one.
Are you talking about the choose your own adventure one with the princess?
There's one. That one is one. There's another one as well.
Oh, okay, because that one I was told I did a perfect run, like on my first try. And I was like, and then here's the thing, like I would not have gone back and tried again to get a perfect run. I just like answered the questions like as honestly as possible.
Yeah.
And then which is crazy because like there's there's like a small background with me. I have arachnophobia, and there's a part regarding a spider in that story, or like a woman that turns into a giant spider. And I heard her out, and that was what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, and I was just like, oh shit, like I don't know. For me, that was a little like self victory for me. But anyway, yeah, no, you make a good point, and I think that I definitely think that I definitely felt that there were like, in some instances, like a right or wrong answer, but like I think most of the general like questions that you are asked, like oh, I remember I talked to this one chick saying like, oh, if you did karaoke, which one of these genres would you sing from? And one like like, and that like there's no wrong answer there. You know what I mean?
It's
like,
country. It's always country.
It's just like your music preference. And the thing is like almost all those tests that I took, and granted, like this is where, and I'm sure like there's a level of psychology to this where like the description I got of like, oh, this is what you're like, or this is what you think, blah 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 blah. I personally felt that they were more or less accurate of myself, of what I think of myself. But then there's like that idea of like, do you think of yourself a way that you're actually not? You know what I mean? That kind of like that kind of idea of like, you think you're this, but in reality you're that, and you can't, as yourself, you can't really see that because you have like this bias. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of really fun like self-reflection, and like I hope something that like comes across, because like it was definitely something I was worried about was going to be like kind of like Fallout, like where you pick a couple of things, but really you can choose whatever path you want to be. Whereas like in most people's cases, most people who are going to play this game aren't necessarily going to know what you're going to get through your answers, which is kind of like the actual fun of it, of like hopefully learning a bit about yourself, and then going into that whole thing of then with multiple playthroughs you can then kind of game the system, learn things, and sort of see what happens first and whatnot. Because this game is really interesting in the sense of it is very shallow in terms of some aspects, but like for what's there's so much you can get out of it. Like a great example, and there are many things I can tie into it, but one that I want to bring up, kind of talking about the actual writing of the game, I think this is a fantastically localized game. Like from all of the text to the test to the character dialogue and stuff going on like that, I think the actual localizing and the writing is really, really great. I could not stop laughing at this game's voice acting, though. Like the dub of this game is like so uneven in quality.
I agree, it is uneven to a certain extent. Like I think that the general voice actors, like the voice acting in itself, was pretty solid across the board, except for Vanitas and fucking Chio or whatever. Like God, every time she spoke, I was like, please stop talking.
I'm surprised you didn't fuck with Vanitas. Vanitas might be one of my favorite characters, just because like I'm also a sucker for like rhyming motifs.
I mean, Vanitas sounded like Teddy from Persona 4.
Oh, that's an unpopular opinion, but I like Teddy. So I like Teddy like more than Morgana. I like but I mean, I think it's unfair to compare Kanemaru to Teddy or Morgana, because like dog doesn't talk, but it fills the same role. He fills the same role anyway. But no, Vanitas is just like, I just don't like I just didn't like the voice direction there. Same thing with Chio. Like I wish it was a different. I don't know, something about it just. I don't have like a real like criticism outside of just wasn't wasn't the way I would go with it. You know what I mean?
I'll agree with you with the Chio. Chio is really interesting. Of like, I think in the story sense, she's like not really that well used or interesting. She has some of my favorite like moments though when everyone's talking to each other in the student council room. Like I think those
sure.
moments are really
Yeah.
fun. But then like that, like those are just kind of the moments used for like levity. Like I remember just a random thing when I was getting footage like earlier, I got caught on a cutscene, not even cutscene, of just the characters talking to each other, and it was Chio asking Ryotaro about the time he brought a nude person for a painting, and he's like, "Oh, I've never had sex before, but that definitely happened," and then just leaving it like at that for it. Like, there's a lot of like really funny things with it. And yeah, I would definitely say no one's like inherently bad, but it definitely was like whoever was doing the direction had no idea what the original tone was supposed to be. Because, like, from the students to the bad guys to, like, even some of the main characters at points, there are so many moments of just, like, I know what you're almost there. You're heading in the right direction, but you're steering into, like, Shenmue levels of, like, output.
Yeah, I mean, NIS America definitely does a great job with the localization stuff of it, but like the voice direction, like I thought Ryotaro was great. I think that Kokoro was great. I thought Nozomi was good. I think the issue is that like there were just like these awkward breaks in the dialogue, and it just like, and then the breaks were just not consistent with each other. That it just felt like, and maybe it was something to do with like the audio editing of the game, because like Persona 5 I think is a great example of a well localized game. The voice acting is like S tier, basically across the board, and it's just like so it is interesting. I did write about how I liked most of the characters' voice act, like I said like that there were solid performances, and I still stand by that. But yeah, I think that for me, Venice and Chio were the two that like, even though like I think that what you're saying with the like the kind of banter that they have in between, during downtime in the council room is good. Like I enjoyed it. It just wasn't like I still don't like the voices. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Like if Chio was silent and said like the same thing, I'd be like, oh, I would feel like better about it because it's not the voice acting isn't there, and I could have turned that off. You can turn off like the voice acting if you want to, but yeah, no.
Kuro, how about you? How did you feel about the dub? Actually, did you play it with English or JP?
I played it. I switched it up back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I actually played mute a lot because I was working from home. So I don't really have a lot of strong opinions about it. I thought it was fine for the most part. I'm actually pretty surprised that a game like this got full dub.
That was literally the next thing I was going to say. I was like, I need to know why this got a dub. I'm glad it exists, but I'm like, in a world where like something like Caligula 1 and 2 are JP only, I'm like, why did this game get the dub?
Yeah. I was literally about to say that. I was like, I believe Caligula 2 deserved to have a dub, and it didn't. Not that this one didn't, but I just feel like Caligula Effect probably needed a dub more than in this game.
I guess if anything, this is probably a little bit easier because even though it has like over 100 NPCs and stuff, like it's a still much smaller scale story and cast of characters. I will say though, transitioning into the story, there's not a lot you can really compare to Shin Megami Tensei in the gameplay or the setting outside of it obviously just being a school.
Yeah.
The story and the themes, I will say, I give this game a lot of credit to. Multiple times in the story, I'm going, okay, that's like a pretty generic villain thing, so I guess we're just gonna find out their origin story. Like how many times are we playing an RPG and we find a villain's origin story and it just like it's like air going through us. It's like we don't care. It's like whatever. Whereas like every villain either had an interesting twist in their origin story or was like had some interesting kind of like element that I wasn't expecting about them. Like, and with no spoilers at all, there's a thing that is very, like, not out of left field, but is teased, and I did never really expected it, but the villain in the club building was like, oh, that's an interesting twist, because at that point, your whole thing is find an area with mist, get rid of the crystal. Second thing, get rid of the crystal, then you do the boss. And the club building mixes that up with the second area having a boss for you, and then finding out really like how the real villain kind of revealed themselves. And then not only that, but like their origins not just being like some weird sappy story. Like I was really impressed by how the story like the story of the whole school was like very interesting. There was never a moment of being like, God, I don't care about this, which is really saying a lot, because this couldn't be more generic of you're in a high school and you have amnesia. Like this game like should have a pretty like it has a very generic ass premise, but it does a great job at like explaining the characters, explaining like the world you live in, because like even if you don't really understand like the difference between a pact bear or a demon and stuff, they do a really good job of kind of like showing that like things matter. And I think actually a big thing about this that I give a lot of credit to is they do a great job of showing you that death definitely matters. Like, people will die a lot. It's not just that thing of like, darn it, we gotta get out of the school, where like you see someone die every now and then. Like, there's straight up just segments where there's blood all over the place and people are dying constantly.
Yeah, some of them are extremely disturbing. I will say that I feel like even a trigger warning will be nice, because there are no spoilers, but there are some things that are extremely disturbing that happens in the game. They just kind of like, you're not really expecting that. I'm sure you expect it from like the mature setting and everything, but some of the things that happens, I'm like, okay, I did not expect this. Like even not even a million years, you're talking about like this game does have a lot of like the same RPG things that all the games have and everything, but at the same time, this game just pulls the craziest things. And I don't mean like just like it's just really bizarre stuff that happens. That I'm like, I just need a moment to like process everything that just happened.
Also, yeah, shout out that this is rated M. I 100% think if someone was actually doing their job at the ESRB, not that I think the ESRB needs more things to do, but like I am very impressed that this is not rated M for mature, which makes me kind of just think that maybe just no one really looked.
Absolutely.
Because like for all of us have played Persona 5. I 100% think Monarch is way more deserving of M for mature than Persona 5.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I guess, like, listen, like there's blood in Monarch, and like the themes of things like I think that Persona, the mature stuff, is a lot more in your face about it. Like I get what you guys are saying, and I'm not saying that Monarch shouldn't get an M rating. I think it should, but like, if I had to pick between the two, I think I would still go Persona.
I want you to find me a character in Persona, any of them, who openly says upon meeting you as a character, yeah, I just fucked everybody on the baseball team. I need I need that. Like, I need that level of, like, Jesus! Like, man, everyone here may look like a random generic anime character, but, like, hey, it does a good job of feeling like an actual, like, world, whereas, like, I look at the world of, like, Persona games, and I'm like, that's anime. Like, that's the anime world. Whereas, like, this looks very, like, anime and stuff for me, but, like, I felt like this actually did a better job of kind of portraying a lot more realistic elements you would see in a school or academy setting. And I really like that, just in the sense of even characters who you never really, like, actually talk to. I always wanted to, like, talk to somebody, for, obviously, you get benefits through registering everybody, but I never really came across an NPC that I was like, this seems dumb, this doesn't make sense, this wouldn't be how someone is actually acting. Like, they did a good job, not only writing, I think, the characters, but also writing the personalities of them when they're going insane, because of how big of a factor the whole madness thing is.
Here's what I'll say. Like, I'm not disagreeing with you on what you're saying. I just wasn't really given a reason to care.
No, that's for sure. You're not gonna, yeah.
A lot of stuff that there was happening, I was just like, I don't care about this. Like, why should I care about this? Like, and there, we haven't talked about this yet. There are some fucking Kojima level cutscenes here that last like 10 plus minutes, and I'm like, what is actually happening right now? Like, I don't. Why do I need to watch this? Like, I know at the end of the day, I'm gonna. I don't know if we can swear on here.
You can swear.
I'm gonna fucking fight you. I'm destroy your ideal, and we're gonna move on. And you're probably gonna have no more relevancy to the rest of the story. Like that's, you know what I mean? It's just like I don't need these 10 minute cutscenes where I'm just like, I'm just getting like this unnecessary monologue or whatever, or like, one-on-one conversation between one of the party members and the person's ideal we're trying to. I'm like, I just don't need it. I just don't need it.
You're right. You're right. Every single boss in this game has a monologue, and they need to talk about everything. 'Cause obviously, it makes sense because of the team. Like you're just literally destroying the ideals, like the foundation of why they're doing what they're doing. So it makes sense that it happens. But the approach of just sitting there, kind of listening to this person rambling. And the funniest part is you don't know any of it, not even as a character, because you have amnesia. So you have absolutely, even on the game, you have zero fucks to give about what's going on, because at the end of the day, you just want to go home. like you don't care. You don't know any of these people. From a story perspective, you don't know them. So like, there's no really much of a reason.
Shout out to the game at least giving you shit immediately for not even knowing your own sister. It's like, I mean, dude, I don't even know you. Like, I'm gonna be real. Like, I could just be a loaf of bread right now. Like, who you are as a protagonist is negative meaning in the world. But I 100% get it. I will say this: the one complaint I had with every villain, and it only because I actually fucking love the design of all the characters in this game, because this game has, ironically, some of the best and worst design, and I'll get into that later. But, like, I loved when you would finally fight a boss, because they would then have their Monarch with them. But that thing is, there was never that, like, out of their whole 10-minute monologue, there's never a moment of them transforming, and you see their Monarch, but then you notice in battle they also transform themselves. Like, where was your badass, like, I'm turning into, like, there's one boss in particular who literally just turns into, like, a Silent Hill priest with a shotgun. And I'm like, where was this guy's transformation?
That's another thing that's, like, it's interesting, and it's just easy to compare to Persona, but like, so like, in this game, you don't see anyone like make their pact or anything, like any sort of like origin of that. So like, the level of threat, the level of like stakes in this game, even though they are in the sense of the story very high, they just don't. It just doesn't feel like that ever. It never feels.
It's interesting because it's almost like they chose, and it's hard to say which is the correct one because we only got one side of it. I at least appreciate them committing to being like, you will know why this person chose to do what they did. Like, there's no character I've met who I'm like, why are you doing this? But it would be nice to like have that thing of just like, because even. Oh my god, I have the list in front of me, I'll forget her name. Even Nozomi, like, being one of the only, like, characters you meet who then you see how she makes a pact, it's like, oh, okay. Like, there you go. But, like, even that, like, you just kind of jump into the story as it's progressing, and, like, it would be nice if it was maybe, like, optional stuff of, like, hey, tell me more about this, but also show me. Like, don't just be like, it happened, I made a pact, there you go.
It very much is... Yeah, it's very much a... Well, here's the thing, though. Like, it feels actually, not in this case, but for a lot of the story, it feels a lot like Tell, Don't Show.
Which then, because of, like, the nature of this game definitely not being a AAA, not even a single A, like, this is a budget game for sure. Like, there's never a moment in this game where you're like, oh, they did this because of, like, stylistic reasons. It's like, no, they probably had to save money. Like, when you're outside of the school and you can't look up or down in the camera, that's not because they want you to not look up. That's because, oh, that's extra environment. We better keep that camera low. We don't want them looking around.
Yeah, like, I get that they wanted to like, this game obviously took hits development wise because they wanted this game to run on Switch. But like if they do get a future game or whatever it may be, whatever this team does next, like if it has to be an exclusive for y'all to like have more resources and make your game like better in that sense, like please do it, like because it's not like I know it's a business to a certain to a certain extent, but like if I could have gotten like just more resources in this game to have like more variety in basically everything, then I would have sacrificed that Switch version like that. You know what I mean? Like I love the Switch, but like especially because you're already a niche game. You're already a niche game in a niche genre. So why don't you just go all out on one platform? And like Persona 5 does, or like I mean, and granted they had to deal with Sony, but like, and I think that's a little bit of a jump, a stretch, for the sake of the argument. But like, I think it's still like the point still gets across. Like, I think that would have been a better option for them at the end of the day than what they did. Like, because I'm curious, because NIS America, they're very much like they sell their games on their store. And then if we're lucky, we'll get them at like other retailers like Amazon and GameStop, and that's in Best Buy, and like that's and that's an if. Like I'm curious to see like how Monarch is going to sell on the Switch.
I will say this: there is an important thing to note that most people won't know because specific Japanese only publishers, unless you're a big nerd like me, you shouldn't really care about. So this game was primarily funded and the development was paid by Furyu, and Furyu is known for we are the budget game publisher. Like, I hope you like this type of game. We make this, but for cheap. Like, they are basically the Blumhouse films of like RPGs in a lot of like aspects. Like similar like with how they did Caligula. Like Caligula is like, wow, this is a really great concept with a very tiny budget, even in like Caligula 2 where it did get expanded upon. I don't think it's as limited because of its platforms, but then the problem is they make their games as cheap as they can, and their big point is they put them out on as many platforms as possible to make back that money. So the fact of it like probably dropping, it's going to be harder. In Japan, it actually sold really, really well. Like it sold above expectations. But the sales were still like 80% Switch, 20% PlayStation 4 and 5. I will say this.
That's wild. That's wild.
I
know that the Switch is huge, like is a huge platform, and people are still like trying to get PS5s, but like from what I've heard from what you guys said about the Switch version, because like once I heard from Spencer, I was just like, oh, I believe you, so I'm not going to touch it, So and I was going to get the PS5 version regardless at the end of the day, because like I only really get Switch games if they're exclusive to the system or if they're like indies, because those are games that I know are going to run well on that platform. Like I don't, So for me, I was like, oh, I'm definitely gonna get the PS5 version. Like, we're getting the Trails from Zero from NIS America later.
Now
this
that'll
year.
run fine on Switch. That I'm not worried about.
It'll run fine on Switch, but I'm still getting it on PlayStation. So like, you know what I mean? Because it's just one of those kind of things where, like. I get what you're saying. I hope that if they do get a sequel or a follow-up or something, that they kind of realize, like, hey, even for what you're doing, like what we're doing here, that game was not it for Switch, and like we should like hopefully just go to one platform, being the PS5.
Did both of you ever get a chance to play, at the very least, Caligula 2 or Caligula 1 per comparison?
I was going to ask you, actually, like, how does this stack up to the Caligula Effect games? Because I do have both of them, and I'm going to be really upset if you tell me that those are, like, on the same level as this game.
So that's what's really interesting is, like, so Kuro, I forget. I know you have 1. Did you mess with 2?
I reviewed it.
Sorry.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So, Kuro, let me know what you think, but like for me, this is what's funny. I think this game has a lower budget than Caligula 2 by a long standing. But I think
Yes.
obviously a large part of that had to do with it was a sequel. It had already had an anime. They had like 2 other releases beforehand to go in there. But I think this has a stronger structure than Caligula for its first entry. Like, the first game is messy, but it's very fun for what it's trying to do. It's got a great world, it's got a great soundtrack, but I didn't care for the characters and the story nearly as much as I did in Monarch. But, even with that being said about Caligula 1, Caligula 2 took every problem I had about Caligula 1 and made it much better, even though it was still
100%.
a budget RPG. Like, Caligula 2 has a lot of moments of being like, hey, this is a really like fun, really stylized game, and I hope that they learn this, because I think there's a way to make this game look a lot better, but it just would require a little bit more money, and I hope that they get there for it, because like one of my biggest things with it, kind of going back to what I said with the designs, the art. The artist who does all the characters' designs, everything you see for the portraits are all amazing and they're all immaculate. It's very, very great drawings.
Very good.
The 3D models are trash. Everybody's 3D model is
100%.
absolute garbage.
What's up with our noses?
You know, honestly, like the one character I hit that I was like, this game cannot do 2 things. It can't do old people, and it definitely can't do anyone with facial hair.
Oh yeah,
like if you ever looked at anyone talk with a beard, and I have footage of this as well. If you ever talk to anyone in this game with facial hair, ironically, actually, without not counting Yogu, Yoga Jingo, he at least his beard matches up. Every other NPC with facial hair, their beard doesn't move, but their mouth and jaw does, and it's just they're eating their beard while talking. It's like, it was just not a thing that it was like, we can kind of match this art style, but like it's almost like, if you ever played Super Smash Brothers on 3DS without the black lines, and it's like, something's missing here. Like some part of this 3D model is missing greatly, because all of them look close, but not close enough to look good.
Yeah. I think they will benefit from doing more 2D cutscenes like they do in Persona or other anime games like this. Because like you were saying, all the 2D artwork that we see in the game, it's really good. The artist is really talented, but when you look at the models, you're like, oh man, there's a significant downgrade on like what you see in the characters. So if they did something like a lot of 2D cutscenes or something like that, I think it will like really help the game.
Yeah.
Although it's more expensive to do 2D animation.
I would at least say, yeah, man, like, what really stinks is, like, what I think, because the game definitely doesn't live up to it in this aspect, if they could find a way to make the style in the 3D from that opening animation into the game, I think that would have helped immensely. They get close. Like, when you're in the battle arenas, you kind of get that, like otherworldly, ethereal vibe, for sure. But it's never really quite there. And I will at least say this. They do a good job of... They picked a very, like, good choice for the setting. Like, I never found myself thinking the setting was boring, because it was always, okay, you're in a school. Schools are going to look primarily pretty similar, but they at least did interesting things with the school and the layout that it never felt copy and paste to me, even though there were definitely things that are just copy and pasted over. But I think for a first attempt, they do way more good than they do bad in their budget, in their execution, in a lot of things. And I think every problem that, like, we have, whether it be from, like, the grindiness of it or the execution or some of, like, the voice and stuff and the 3D models for sure, there's nothing here that, like, makes me go, boy, they better not make another game again. Because, like, I think the developer who made this Lancars is, like, they do a lot of great work, just most people don't ever really play their games. Like, did either of you two play Lost Dimension on PS3 or Vita?
I haven't. I'm sure that is something on my Vita wish list that I haven't bought yet, but...
you might actually have it. It was on PlayStation Plus forever ago.
Yeah, I have it on PS Vita. I played it.
So this is, like, the most... like, them kind of game to compare it to. Although, ironically, I almost think Lost Dimension might have had actually a bigger budget than this, but it is more apparent because that was a PS3 and Vita game specifically. Like, it never even got a port to any other current systems. It is on PC, but that's not like the PC version's doing anything the console ones weren't. But, like, this is a studio who's definitely more knowing of, like, hey, get the bones of our game really, really solid and kind of go from there. And I will say, at the very least, if you've played Lost Dimension and are stuck on the fence, check this out. And if you've checked this out and like it and you want something else that is very different but still very, very good in quality, I would say also check out Lost Dimension, because like they're very complementary to each other in terms of experiences, even though the story and everything is very, very different.
Yeah, it's I definitely like man, it's like one of those things where playing through this game, like I definitely was like, oh, this is like there's so much of this is like a slog. Again, I think the like almost all the like there are some good ones, but like almost all the puzzles suck. Like in ways I'm just
walk me through this. Why are the puzzles bad? Like I'm sure for some people they are, but like I don't know like what's wrong in my brain. I've not had a puzzle where I'm like, this sucks.
Because they're not like even with the puzzles that I do figure out a lot of the time, there's just not a real sense of satisfaction behind like figuring it out. Like, you know, like there are good puzzles, and like there are bad puzzles that are like hard to solve. You know what I mean? Like they're not the good kind of like when you can't figure it out. Like there are puzzles where you can't figure it out, and when you figure it out, you're like, oh man, I feel so like good that I figured that out. And then there are other puzzles where I'm just like, what kind of clue is this? Like, what kind of hint is this? And then when I figure it out, I'm like, that's stupid. That was that was a stupid hint, or like that there were like I remember one. I think it was in Act 1 still, where like the clue to get this to the key to this door, it was like the clue was wedding anniversary, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like that could literally mean anything. Like, you know what I mean? And it's just and then when I I think that was one where I just like had to ask someone, I'm like, dude, what is the answer to this? Because I literally don't know how to figure it out.
I will say it was funny. I had moments of friends getting confused by hints that weren't hints. Like I had a friend who was like, what does this mean? There's like, it says like the key to like pi, and it says like what does pi's formula have to do with this? And I'm like, it literally has nothing to do with the puzzle. It's just trying to tell you, like the world almost like over complicates your hints, because like the amount like there's two puzzles I'm thinking of that like are overly simple and then overly complicated in such a weird way. Of like the ones that I think of that were hilariously oversimplified is in the first building you start off in, when you get to the roof and you have to figure out the password. Oh no, sorry, that's not the first one. When you're in the first year building with Kokoro, when you're in the roof for there, and it's like you're gonna have to learn this super complex secret code, and all of the ways you understand that code are hard, but the character you're with literally just tells you all of the answers to understand the code. Like all of the challenge for that puzzle was gone. But then on the other hand, like, I totally get what you mean. There is another puzzle, I forget where it was. It might have been the club building, where you meet a lady who's like, I can't remember my baby's names. And you know what the names are, and I literally, for the life of me, couldn't figure it out and just had to try them all, because I was like, I don't know what... Like, I know the answer, but I don't know how you want me to give it to you.
Oh, see, that was one of the few puzzles I liked, because it was like, oh, okay, you figure out that they're, like, all of the kid names are katanas. Mm-hmm. Named after katanas, and then you just, like, search the room, and then, like, you know, Shinya will tell you, like, oh, that's based off of a katana. And then you just have to, like, yeah, granted, you, like, kind of have to either remember them or, like, write the names down so you remember. And then you just you have to type them in one by one. That was one of the few puzzles I liked, because it felt, at least, was it particularly great at the end of the day? Like, no, not really. Like, I mean, it's fine. But it was way better than, like, the combination locks where you find this document. And
I,
then the
I
code
was
is
so
on the
worried
document,
that was
or,
all
like,
the puzzles. I was so worried it was just lockers. Because, like, early on, I found a room that was literally just chock full of them. And I'm like, please tell me this game has more than just combination puzzles, which thankfully it does. But it is a lot of, like, similar numbers. Curl, what did you think about the puzzles?
They were fine. I think that there are some that are pretty cool, like you guys were saying, but there are some that are just obnoxious. I think they never really find a balance between. For example, one of them, the one the roof, the answer is password.
Yeah.
And I was like, I face palm,
Can't,
and I was just
can't
like,
believe you spoiled that for everybody. Yeah, sorry everybody. One of the passwords in this game is literally password.
Wait, hold on. So did you actually have to go through the whole coding process to find out that password was the password, or did you notice that the guy says password's the password?
I will say I'm stupid and I did it all, but
I
it actually,
did it all, yeah.
but it made me more mad finding out the answer, because finding out the password is password was easier than that actually.
Yeah, I was super, and not like frustrated. It was just like I face palm. I was like, no way. Like I am so annoyed that I just didn't try it out the first time.
Oh, see, it's great. Oh, I see. I actually like that. Like I thought that was one of the better ones, just because, like, at the very least, it gave you options, because they said like this is going to test your deduction skills.
Who got scared? Like, this is an immediate way to scare me in a game with puzzles. When to enter the password, it brings up the in-system keyboard. I'm like, oh god, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, like, it could be anything. Yeah.
No.
I didn't like that.
Oh, I liked it. He's just like, password's the password. I'm like, cool. Typed in password. He's like, cool. You can go through. I'm like, awesome. Like, it was just. But then, like, if you didn't notice that, then there is another option for you. So that's why I liked it, because it was just like, hey, if you notice that he says that password is the password, then you can just go through. But if you don't, there is still a way that you can get it. You just have to work a little bit harder for it.
Right. Or there's one that they did. I don't really don't want to go through all of them, but there's one where you can also in the ceiling with pictures of music composers. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
That was a good one.
Yeah, that was one of the better puzzles as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that one I did like, especially because I am a music snob and I like my composer. So like I was like, hey, I like that. That was actually cool. I thought it was gonna be harder actually. When I was doing it, I was like, oh man, I thought it was gonna be like more challenging than it was.
Curl, what about you though? What were like some complaints that like stuck out to you, of like whether they be like kind of nitpicky or like bigger ones? Like what were things that kind of fell short for you with the whole Monarch experience?
Just in general? Oh man, that's a really broad question. I think one of my biggest issues with the game is the way that they handle the pacing in the game, and I think it's because of how they do the act thing, which I don't know. I don't think is well done, but I think it reaches the peak on the game at a certain point. I think they do kind of like a break in between after the last act one. They do kind of this break, and it kind of reaches a peak in the story. And then afterwards, it's kind of just like, okay, well, let's go back to how we are doing every single dungeon. Like, like it just loses all the momentum that they had, like, build up until that point. And I think that from there on, it doesn't, the pacing just kind of blows. And I think it's because they were trying to do this, I think it's their own detriment, because they were trying to do this innovative kind of like, almost like choose your own adventure type, You're building the story as you go with all this kind of stuff and everything. So I know that it was done on purpose because of how they were trying to date the story, but I don't think it worked really well. It has potential. It's just not there.
I get that. No, for sure. Cam, were there any other kind of like things that like really like irked you about it? Of just like, man, why did you do this, or why didn't you do this?
I mean, my biggest thing was just the level, like the mission structure of just going to destroy the ideals, and then like almost every time you have to get inside this locked room or this blocked off room, and then you finally can like do the battle. which we've already kind of talked about, and outside of that, just kind of, and then we in the puzzles, of course, and then outside of that, not really something that like frustrated me to no end, but it was just kind of like a nuisance, like a, come on, do we really need this? Like, and I get like it makes sense for the sense of the game, but I was just like, it was just like, I wish this was not here, and that's just like the madness meter outside of battle. I'm just like, oh, I got to collapse. Now I'm back in the infirmary. Now I just got to quick travel back to the beginning of the floor. It's not that much of a detriment. Like, it just felt like an annoyance. You know what I mean? It's like, why is this here?
Yeah, I actually never experienced that. I know the meter goes up because it happened on the for me on the demo, on the Japanese demo, but it never happened to me in the game when I played it.
Yeah, I would just like look away for a second, and then of course one of the students walks up to me and then like screams, and then it automatically puts you to 100, and then I collapse. I'm like, God damn it! Like, you know what I mean?
How did you all feel about the explanation and the implementation of madness, insight, and then enlightenment? Because like for me, I thought the descriptions were so overly simple for both that I was like, all right, I understand enlightenment. Basically, you become woke, you unlock your final. Madness was a little bit weirder. Of like, okay, knowing that you get a boost, but then I didn't really understand that you weren't able to control your character, and how that could easily like, not only can you not control your character, is that he will then also kill whoever is closest, and if it's not an enemy, will then like wipe your own team. And then like I think I literally made it like 15 hours into the game, and I was like, I've got to understand how do I do enlightenment, because I was not resonating with characters at all. And then when I figured it out, it was like, cool. When will I be able to do this? Because it seemed like such an edge case.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen like for me. I think I became enlightened maybe 3 times my entire playthrough.
Also, I will say this: the protagonist has the most garbage enlightenment skill.
He does. He really does.
Like his whole thing after going through all that work is like, good news, you can act twice.
Yeah, I didn't really mess with, like, I very rarely used the skills. I more used it as a damage buff, because like that's the thing. Like, while I really like the combat and I like that there's a wide variety of things that you like, abilities and skills. The thing with Monarch is that like it's not a particularly hard game as long as you're at the level you need to be, and that you can just you just go up behind someone. Like for me, I was just like accelerating slash. All right, now I'm harder to hit too. Accelerating slash, and I just do that over and over and over again, and then I would be harder to hit as well. And then also like with specifically with like Ryotaro, six times rapid fire, and it just like that's all you needed to do. That's all you needed to do to win. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things where I like that there was that variety there. But once you find something, and it could be different for everybody, but once you find something that sticks for you, you don't need to do anything else. Like I didn't feel like it was a priority to become awakened. I never like resonated with anybody, and that was like the main character's like main thing. You know what I mean? I just didn't need to, and like it's like the one thing. Like, granted, you can defer your turn to your main character and stuff like that, but like. Again, like I just didn't feel the need to waste my turn to do that. I would rather use my turn to, like outside of acting, like attacking someone, is to just resolve and get my awaken meter up. And with the madness stuff, you're right. There were some times where I'm just like, oh, I didn't realize that like they're about to go mad if I deferred them or made them use an ability. But like but there were times where. My main character was out in front, close to becoming mad because he was using his authority, and I deferred to him to act again, and then he went mad, and then all my other characters were way far away from him, so he just went on a fucking killing spree, and it was awesome.
The same thing happened to me. I actually killed a boss like that. My character went mad by accident because I deferred to him, and he just killed the boss, and I was like, okay, that was cool. That was cool.
And I will say, like, honestly, besides that little bit of a nitpick for it, I think overall one of this game's biggest strengths for me outside of story is easily got to be the gameplay. Like the gameplay of those battles are so fun and fast, and like
fun.
honestly for me, yeah, replaying them can kind of be a bit of a slog, but the amount of times that even playing for a battle for like the fifth time, same environment, same setup, there would still be just that randomness factor that could sometimes bite you in the ass, that you'd be like, oh my god, like, whether it be you having a different effect that you weren't expecting, or even the cases of like when enemies go mad, of like being like, oh my god, okay.
Yeah, like the battles are fun. I definitely still think and wish that there was a more variety in the environments and the enemy types. Like, I feel like more or less, because the thing is, like, it's also hard to kind of, the game didn't do a good job at distinctualizing what the enemies could do. They all just kind of like looked the same, and then just out of nowhere, oh, this guy just charmed me. Well, shit, I wish I knew, like, that, like, I wish that there was a more obvious design in the enemy types to know, like, oh, this person casts spells. Oh, this person does this.
I almost chalked that up to, for me, of some of that little confusion, because I don't know about you, I really love that this game had quick play animations. I think that really helped the speed and the flow of the gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say, it almost will then sometimes go too fast, of it then being like, oh, well, this is, like, there's not, like, a thing popping up saying, like, you're charmed now. It's like, you better know what that means, because, like, there's no explanation of what's happening to your character outside of the visual, and in most cases, you don't know how many turns that's going to take. So if someone's confused, you're like, well, you better have an item or be really patient, because this could bite you in the ass.
Yeah, this game definitely acts as if, like, everyone who's going to play this game knows how to play a tactical JRPG going in.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. Even as somebody that has played tactical RPGs, at times I'm like, this game lacks, like, I like the lack of things on the when the UI is kind of clean, and that's one thing that I will say. I like how clean the battle UI is, because it's not intrusive, like it's not really in your face or anything, but at the same time it kind of lacks certain things that will help you kind of navigate through it. Like Spencer was saying, with whenever you get poisoned or whatever it may be, and there's just not enough cues to kind of know what's going on. There was some that I was even confusing. There was like one that is confused, but one that is like you're just immobilized, but the symbol is so similar to each other that I wasn't sure which one was the one that was happening. And outside of that symbol, I wasn't like, I really don't know what's going on with my character, but I skipped a turn.
Mm-hmm. I will say another thing that I haven't seen a lot of people really bring up for it, but I did appreciate a lot. I actually really liked a lot of the map design. I think a lot of the maps were really interesting in terms of, like, even if you didn't like the puzzles of, like, the actual, like, school puzzle, I think a lot of the maps were kind of interesting in the sense of, like, for the most part, it's usually just a small arena, but there was always clearly paths and lanes that make the most sense and are going to be the least dangerous to go upon. So, like, I think the map had a lot of, like, fun things for it. Like, this would be a game that, like, if it was DLC, like paid DLC, I probably wouldn't do it. But if they were just, like, one day to go, hey, we added some new achievements and trophies and we added, like, 20 extra battles, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'd play that. Because, like, the battle system is fun enough at its core.
I guess it really depends. I think there's not enough variation on, like, the especially when you grind at the higher levels. There's not enough variation on the battles to really give you that unique, fun, fresh experience. Especially on, like, the dungeons, so to speak, where you're, like, on the other world fighting. I think it's just like it's almost the same all the time. Especially when you're grinding for hours, you're like, man, I already know, like, when everybody's gonna move, what we're gonna do.
It's one of those things, though, that, like, I worry that if you made it one of those things where, oh, it's procedurally generated every time, it would have even less personality and be even more boring to look at.
100% agree with that. I just feel like they could have added some more variations. Even the look of the other world. Is that what they call it? The other world?
Yeah, the let's beat up the crystal world.
Yeah, I feel like they really could have done some things, like maybe thematically speaking, like the one, and that's one thing that I actually do appreciate with even Persona 4, for example. Like every dungeon at least has some kind of theme, and I hate bringing Persona into the game or any other RPGs. I think recently I was playing. We talked about Caligula too. Whenever you are in a certain area, the area becomes the battleground. You know, whether you're in the subway or somewhere, that particular area is the battleground. So it feels fresh whenever you're having a new battle because it's not in the same space. And over here, it's cool because it's a tactical RPG, so you can kind of use the environment for your advantage. Like I was using Nozomi. There's this shield attack that she does, which you can push enemies, and there's a boss battle which you can kind of just push the enemy into this poison thing, and I just kept pushing him back there and poison him. Push every turn. I was just pushing him back in the same area and getting him poisoned. And I wish there was more of that kind of stuff, because more environmental stuff, more like different areas, or even if they had like a way where you could customize and make your own dungeons and other people could try them out. Oh, that would be actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that would have a lot of, because like a lot of it is definitely feel like I kind of drag and drop and fun things like that, because like there is a lot more kind of customization to this than I would have ever thought, especially kind of going back to like the vessels and stuff of like, not only are you like customizing their skill trees, like for the most part most people are going to kind of do skill trees at a certain point the same, but I liked the ability of like not only customizing how your vessels looked, but then the fact that all of the weird armor you're constantly getting dropped from enemies all the time actually make a substantial difference. Like there'd be some times where it'd be like, this is like a plus 20 out of like somewhere, of like having those actually matter and not just being like, this is a weird cosmetic thing, was really nice, because even though those party members aren't really like doing that much, just to have that little extra personality of like, oh, I chose their voice, I chose their hair, I chose their height, I chose their bust, like stuff like that, I think is a really nice pick. I'm going to bring up one. If you guys don't agree, that's fine. My feelings will be hurt. But I'm going to say, if this game comes out and everyone doesn't universally agree on this, I will feel like an insane person. The one thing I think this game does not have any negatives on, I shouldn't say no negatives, because nothing is like complaint free. I was amazed at how much I loved the soundtrack for this game through the entire thing. My only complaint...
Oh yeah, soundtrack rips.
Yeah,
which could be
definitely one of the better parts.
They could use a little bit more, but I mean, again, that goes back to the whole budget thing. But like all the tracks that are there, I thought were great. I thought the use of similar themes popping up. I thought the fact of like I forget the name of the group. Although, fun fact, if you play any of the songs with vocals in this game, you will get copy struck immediately. But any of the tracks with vocals for the boss battles, I thought were great. The soundtrack just really ranges a lot. Like it has a lot of moments of like levity, adventure, mystery, horror. Like they do such a great job. And what's funny is like, Kurosa, you'll appreciate this. This is the exact same composer who did Caligula 2, which is like, these are so different in terms of like production and quality. And like I loved Caligula 2's soundtrack, but it was definitely in your face all the time. Like it never felt like it turned down the volume. Whereas like this one, I felt like struck a really, really good chord for me the whole playthrough.
Yeah, honestly, the music was great. Although sometimes I don't know if it really made sense. Like there's this particular song that I loved, but I was like, I don't know if it makes sense in the context of the game. It's like this trap rap song that plays.
Oh,
the beat is super good.
I know what you're
I'm like,
talking
I don't know
about,
if I should. I don't know if I should be just vibing to this song. Like this is a pretty like intense part of the story, but I'm over here vibing to the music and everything. I'm like, I don't know if it really fits the tone of the game right now. So incredibly good soundtrack, but I don't know if it necessarily fits the tone of the game, which is pretty dark and I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you think about Persona, and like, Persona is stylish, but like the themes of Persona are not. But you know what I mean? Like, but I know, I get what you're saying, and like the boss battle tracks are fucking bangers. Like, I wish like honestly, I wish that they used one of those licensed songs and just used it as a general battle track. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
See, you say that, but then it goes back to Caligula 2. They do the exact same thing in Caligula 2. Although music is a much more bigger part of the world of Caligula 2, there were definitely times where I would be playing Caligula 2 and people around me would be like, "Oh my god, this vocal track will not shut up," because you're just constantly hearing the same tracks over and over and over and over.
I mean, you do that, but like if it's a good enough track, like Last Surprise, or like
You know what? This game you could actually warrant it, because then that goes back to there's not a lot of actual battles. Like, you're never like drowning in random encounters. Like, you always know when you're about to enter a battle. So like, yeah, I could see that. But then it was a thing of like, because of how spaced out battles were, when those boss tracks did hit, it hit extra hard for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that like if a song is good enough, it can definitely fit as like a repetitive like battle theme, especially because like and then when it comes to the boss fights, have another one of those tracks, because like yeah, I mean obviously like a lot of money had to go to those tracks, and like part of me wishes that it went towards something else, because like there is good music outside of those licensed tracks.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, it's kind of like a mix. It feels like a mixed bag, because like at the end of the day, like those tracks are only in such a small part of the overall game. If you think about it, that yeah, it's something like I'm gonna hop. When the tracks drop on YouTube, or if they're on YouTube, I'm gonna definitely take a listen to those every once in a while.
Good news, everybody. Reminder to all of you not cheapskates out there. Even if you don't want to buy the $100 collector's edition, the every deluxe physical copy of it, though, does come with a little softcover art book, but you get a download code for the soundtrack, so everyone can enjoy the soundtrack sample code. Although, I will say, a large majority of the reason I wanted to buy the limited edition is because that was the only way to get the CD. And I don't even think the Japanese one came with the CD, just because like it's a different like soundtrack right for it. But it was one of those things where it's like the two things I was like I really dug about this game. I love how it looks. Oh, cool, an art book, and I love how it sounds. Oh, cool, a soundtrack. It was like that was all I need. I don't really care about acrylics or like pat tapestries.
I will say that you can also just get Spotify. It's on Spotify.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's on
nice.
Spotify right now. Oh,
yeah,
hell yeah.
It's on
Okay.
Spotify.
Hell yeah.
So, I know because shout out to Slime, Lucky Slime. He helped me a lot with the with a lot of the trophies. He did a guide for the trophies and everything, and he also shared the soundtrack with me.
I gotta say, a very respectable platinum. It definitely takes some work, but it's not grindy. Like, it's not like, oh my god, I'm doing... Like, there's no trophy in the game that's like, this is terrible. Like, one of my big things I was worried about was the rankings. I was like, there had better not be a goddamn trophy in this game that's like, I hope you're ready to get S rank on every mission. Like, thankfully that is not a thing. So like it's a good example of it'll show you the story stuff. It'll give you a good amount of the extras, and then also the collectibles are usually well enough hidden. But like I kept going back to the trophy list and being like, wow, this is like a really good one, because I feel like RPGs are so hit or miss in terms of like if they're good or if they're terrible.
You can do it on a single playthrough. The
getting all the endings
platinum.
and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But no, that is that is very, very good to know. And I'm actually checking right now, and I don't think it's on Apple Music though. That's a bummer, but that's okay though. Spotify is still better than nothing. But yeah, we got a couple of questions here. So let's do Twitter first. Our first question comes from Madigan, who says, "Will this game get a sequel, a prequel? Which would you personally prefer?"
I think if there's a Monarch 2, it'll be a brand new cast at a different school.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting question. I think a prequel will actually work very well, especially because if you get the perfect ending and everything, there's still a lot of like unanswered questions as far as like it's hard to explain without spoiling, so I'm not gonna. But I feel like there's a lot of potential if they did a prequel to the game. But I feel like a fresh new cast will also work very well for the game as well.
So good news, everybody. I'm a big fat liar. It is on Apple Music. It's not the full soundtrack, but it is all of the vocal songs. All of the vocal songs done by the artist who they collaborated with, all of those are on there. So not the actual game tracks themselves that are by, and I'm forgetting his name, but a guy who did Caligula, early SMT, Persona and stuff. Those are a separate one. But at least you can enjoy those slappy bangers and stuff. But next one comes from Urameshi Trev. He's got an easy one and a hard one. I'll give you all the easy one first. On a scale of 1 to 10, how hot can we rate Dr. Kakaru?
10 out of 10.
What a great character. I really
Yeah.
like I feel like he's not a character I should have enjoyed as much as I did. My only complaint, I don't like that he's in a room by himself, because I wish he had more instances of interacting with people. But I did always appreciate that when you got a new team member and you went in there with him, then he would kind of get to interact with them, because I really enjoyed him kind of bouncing off of the students.
Yeah, he's actually one of those characters that I really enjoyed, even the voice acting with and everything, because I think the voice actor must have had fun with that character.
And speaking of which, I was going to ask that. Is he voiced by Jiraiya? Like, it sounds just like Jiraiya's voice actor.
Ooh, that is his voice actor. I didn't think about that one. I was actually really stuck on who voiced Vanitas, and I still don't know. But no, that is 100.
Max Middleman vibes from him.
That
but
is
I don't know.
definitely not Max Middleman. I know that for sure.
But it sound like I know, but it sounded like him. I was just like, I could see it end up being him. I don't know.
Ironically, I thought Vanitas was Tom Taylorson for way too long, and then I just asked him, and he was like, "No, that is not."
Yeah, and unfortunately, the English voice cast isn't on behind the voice actors yet or anything like that.
In classic Twitter tradition, we'll have to wait until on launch day everyone puts out all. I always think it's so funny. Some games, you have to wait really, really long for no reason. Well, you could have probably announced this before launch day, but I mean, hey, nice to know your random voices in the background, Max Middleman for Horizon 2. But no, so Urameshi's actual question, I'm very curious what you all think about this. Would you say the game lives up to the launch price? The launch price is technically $60 if you're getting it physically. A reminder, it does come with that little softcover art guide and the downloadable soundtrack. Do you think the game offers enough content to justify with its multiple routes, builds, and for the replay value? So, Kuro, I'll let you go first. Do you think this is worth $60 to you? If you did not get this review and you had experienced it, would you drop $60 on it?
Well, I still bought it. I still pre-ordered the game,
Mm-hmm.
so my money's still on the line, right? I think it depends on the kind of gamer that you are, I guess. If you're really into JRPGs, I think you're gonna get your money's worth time-wise.
Kind of like how we said earlier, you can't just blindly recommend this to somebody. Fans of RPGs, you're not guaranteed to love Monarch.
Yeah.
But for you personally, when you rolled credits, did you think it was worth $60?
I thought it was worth my time.
Okay.
Because obviously, I see my time as money, and looking at the amount of time that I spent with the game, I think it's worth the money. I think again, it's just one of those games that is definitely not for everyone, and I can see a lot of people calling this game almost a disappointment in some aspects. Although I also understand why they're disappointed, but it's also not the fault of the game itself.
Cam, what about you?
I mean, having played the game now, I would in general, without the quality of the game aside, this is $60 worth of content. But knowing the quality of the game, and just know, especially if you are a JRPG guy or a JRPG person, you love JRPGs. It's like us, it's kind of our favorite genre. There are plenty of other JRPGs that I would recommend before Monarch, that I would say that for you to play. So I wouldn't I would say you can wait on this one. I think that is a fair recommendation. I think it's a game that like if if you want to play later, you can play later. Like regardless of like the feedback or the reviews say, and you want to like form your own opinion. I would still say wait for a price drop unless you really want to support the, like listen, there are people that like and I'm one of them in certain situations where like I want to buy this game at full price even though I know I may not play this straight away because I want to support this game. And if you want to do that, absolutely. But if you're not in that headspace with this game, then yeah, I would say wait till it drops, $20.
Drop $20 or tell it's
Oh, man.
$20?
No, it drops $20 in price. Like it's at like $40.
So like a $40. Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think if you want an RPG and get a similar experience, you can play Caligula too. I think that game will definitely give your money's worth. And then once this game drops to 40, you can play this one. That way you're still, supporting the Furio and NIS America. I think that will be a good way to do it.
I have a weird answer. I definitely agree with both of you. I think, personally, I would have gone 50 for this, which ironically Caligula 2 was actually 50 and this is 60. I think 50 would have made this a lot more of an impulse buy to anyone who might be on the edge or isn't going to be waiting. And I mostly say that just not due to the quality, but just because of how much competition there is kind of out there. Because like again,
That's fair.
If you're releasing less than 3 days away from Elden Ring, which will be costing the exact same amount of money, that's definitely a tough cookie, like in terms of like arguing. But again, going back to the thing of if you like the demo and are like, hey, guess what? The demo, it just gets better from there. Personally, in my opinion, I thought it was definitely worth full price, and even to the point of, for me, outside of the fact that I got bullied by NIS on Twitter, I'm glad I have the collector's edition coming. I think that, like, for everything I'm getting with it, I think all the goodies and stuff with it, I'm excited for that. And this is coming from someone who's probably relapsed for the most part. I know that by most people's standards, I still buy way too much crap. But, like, I haven't bought a collector's edition from NIS in almost 5 years. This is the first game that's made me find... Like, I didn't even buy Caligula's collector's editions, but, like, something about this made me be like, you know what, I'm excited. And then after finally playing it for the review and everything, it lived up to it enough for me where I'm like, I'm excited to have this in my collection. I'm really... just happy for also other people to play it. I think the discussion for it is going to die very quickly, but I hope those 3 days are glorious. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Just really please send me all of your Monarch tweets, because I know it'll just be all Elden Ring from there. Zaid says, and we kind of discussed this earlier, but did anyone have any extra thoughts about the ego mechanic and all the kind of psychological tests? They were mentioning how it was a really unique mechanic, and I know we had our thing for it, but was there anything else kind of unsaid about the ego mechanic that anyone wanted to say?
I think it's definitely one of the highlights of the game, and I think that again, I think it helps kind of establish this playthrough, having a sense of identity and like this is my playthrough and what I'm going, like, it in a small way but still worth mentioning. Oh, I got these, like, this fiend first, and then I got this fiend and things like that, while other people will have something different. I wish like the fiends were more than just things that you used in battle. I wish that they had like at least like some sort of like personality or something like that.
Yeah.
There, but in general, I think like when I did the psychological tests, like those were the things where I'm like, I kind of like perked up for. I'm like, oh, I'm ready for this. Like I'm looking forward to doing this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're really good. I think that the whole ecosystem is very nice, but it's also really easy to cheat on them because at the end of every dungeon there is a questionnaire that you do, and it's literally related to that particular scene. So, like as long as you know the questions are geared towards that, it's easily, you get the most points if you do that. For example, if you're in the Lost dungeon and the questions are geared towards Lost, if your answers are geared towards Lost, you're gonna get the most points out of that. So, although it's really interesting, and I feel like it was a really nice addition to the game because it flows so well with the rest of the gameplay. I think it could have used a little bit more extra. I don't know, something extra to it.
I think one thing extra that I just thought of while talking to both of you that I think would go a long way of kind of going to the evaluation of everything. I would have loved after you take a test, or every now and then maybe at the end of an act, it does a breakdown of like, hey, X amount of people chose this answer. You along with this many people are leaning towards gluttony, where more people are going towards sloth or envy. Like I think like a comparison and kind of like that social connecting tissue would be really fun.
That would be really cool. That's like in Catherine, right? They do that on Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's really nice. I like that.
Carson says, I'm really excited for the game. On the AMA there on Reddit, the director of the game said he would like to get a sequel or for this to become a series. Any thoughts on if it'll perform well enough to do so? We again talked about it in terms of it's done definitely better than they thought in Japan. I'm curious because like I've definitely gone off on this myself, but for both of you, are you seeing people interested in this? Like, because I feel like if there's ever been a game I'm simping for and I'm pushing, it's been this game, and it's not because like I feel like I have to, just because I feel like this is a really easy game that'll fly under someone's radar and then no one's gonna check out. But like Cam, like what about for you? Like, how do you think this is gonna perform on Tuesday?
I don't know. I think I don't think that this is going to be. I don't think this is going to be like a game that will attract those that aren't looking for this. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, again, I think there is an audience for this game, and I do not think people outside of that audience will get this game.
I want to see an ad for this on the GameStop television. Like, you know, when you go in, you see the GameStop TV. I want to see, like, the GameStop host selling this game. And I wanted to see, like, what normies think about this. Like, how do you sell this to the GameStop, like, randos?
Yeah, I think this is going to end up on somebody's hidden gem list or something like that. I don't think this game is going to sell super well. And I really hope it does, because I see a lot of potential in this game for the next game. I always, whenever I play games like this, like when I was playing Caligula, although I didn't like the first Caligula game, and I dropped it, I saw a lot of potential in like the ideas and everything, which is why I was even open to play Caligula too, because I saw that there was potential. It's just sometimes the budget or, you know, a lot of other constraints that they have, they don't really pan out with the ideas and everything. And I feel like this is one of those games where probably not going to sell super well, but I hope it does well enough to merit a sequel, and then the sequel can be like that. Or maybe that Royal Edition, because they did that for Caligula too, right?
That's a little bit trickier, because, that was going from exclusive to other. I would say this is actually, I think its best hopes at getting a continued success is, I think it being on more platforms now in the Western release is really going to help. I think it being on Steam is a really big deal. And actually, like, they've really committed to this being like a big worldwide thing. Most people don't know this, but they actually announced in the Japanese and Asian copies of this game this month, actually, they're going to be getting a patch for all of the English VO and English localization. So, like, they're really, like, going out of their way to be like, hey, guys, like, this is a big thing for us. Like, we're never going to see Atlas patching in the English dub to the Japanese version of Persona or Shin Megami Tensei 5. Like, that's just not a thing most companies do. But, like, they're definitely seem to be in it for the long haul, not for the immediate success. So I hope it's legs, and I hope the majority word of mouth definitely does help. I think once it goes on sales, kind of like what you were saying, Cam, like, I think, like, once, like, we start seeing, like, Wario64 or whoever tweeting this out being, like, $40, $50 or $30, it'll be like, pick this up, it's super good, go check it out. So, like, I think they've done everything they can to make this game as much of a success as it'll ever be. Like, outside of having a terrible release day, which I wish they released it earlier, but outside of its release date, I think they've done everything with the demo and the quality of the game itself and the platforms it's on to succeed as best as it ever was going to, you know? So we got a last couple. Oh, sorry.
Well, I just want to say, like, really quickly, like, I think a good way for me to explain is, like, I hope, you know, I never want a game to fail, you know, regardless of how I feel about it, unless unless it's like terrible, and it's obviously meant to just like rake in money, which this game
Yeah,
is not.
what's a game you hate? I don't know what you hate. I know what you love. What does Cam hate?
What game do I hate? Oh man,
I need like the last game that you were like, this game blows. Like, I hate this game.
dude, I really can't think of one right now. But
You're too positive. If I gave Kuro that question right now, he would tell me on the spot Kingdom Hearts 3. Kuro, tell me a game that's not Kingdom Hearts 3. What's a game you hated?
Final Fantasy 15.
God, what a terrible
Wow,
answer. What a terrible answer,
terrible
Kuro.
answer. Terrible.
No, I'm pulling your leg there. A game that I hated. I really had to think about it. I don't think I ever played a game that I really hated. Like even Kingdom Hearts 3 or Final Fantasy 15, which are games that I definitely have really strong opinions about. I don't really hate them. There were things that definitely didn't work for me. I don't know. I don't know if I have a game that I really hate. The game that kickstarted my YouTube channel, Fallout 76. I really hated that game. Yeah,
kick them while they're down. That'll get it for you.
Yeah, I think that game's in a different place now, but yeah, at launch, like I would not be surprised saying that. What? Oh man, I'm trying to. I really am trying to think.
You have until the end of the show. We have like 3 more questions, then we can wrap up, and my baby bladder could go.
Yeah, but what I will say regarding this, like the success of this game, is that like, I walked into a GameStop where these people should know when their games come out and shit like that. I was there to pick up Tokyo Mirage Sessions for the Wii U, and they had no fucking idea what I was talking about.
And that's a Nintendo game.
And that's a Nintendo game. So with this not being a Nintendo game and a niche JRPG, I just wish it the best of luck, is what I'm gonna say.
So, we are thankfully not the only ones who are excited. YouTube, Keikomori13 says, "Oh my god, I've been looking forward to this game so much ever since it was recommended to me while I was watching Caligula 2 videos," which, hey, very on brand. "I'm super excited for it to come out next week, so I'm glad we are not the only ones." Ron Allen says, "This game looks sick, and I hope it runs good on Switch." So I wanted to put this out there, because Kuro knows you messed around with it a little bit. I've put about 3 hours into the Switch version. If you only have the Switch, great news. You will be fine with it. The only concessions is it obviously runs at 30. It never really dipped at all in any of my experience. The only thing that is definitely extremely noticeable is it has probably one of the worst the worst resolutions I've ever seen. It's incredibly low resolution on a TV. If you're playing handheld, which I think actually this game probably works a lot better handheld, if you're playing it on the Switch version, you will not be missing much. It is just very low resolution, blown up from the Switch's like 720p to like a 70-inch TV. But like overall, it's totally serviceable, but you won't like regret your purchase.
Yeah, only if you own the Switch. Like, if you have a PS4 or a PC, why are you buying it on Switch?
Actually, I would even say PS4, like, weirdly enough, it doesn't take any advantage of being on Pro. So even if you're playing it on PS4, it still, like, doesn't run at, like, 4K or 60, which is very odd, because I feel like a PS4 Pro, I feel like, should be able to run this game at least, like, higher than, like, 1080p. Monoplush actually asked, what platform do you plan on buying this on yourself? We all played this on PS5. Even knowing whatever, like, even if I didn't know whatever, I was still going to do PS5, but PS5, like, running this game at, like, 4K 60, again, it's not a graphically impressive game, but it looks very nice, and it's very smooth to play. Like, do you both agree?
Yes.
Yeah, it runs well, especially on the PS5 specifically. Like, I had no issues with that game on PS5.
And then our final question, which is very timely, Radioactive Cosmic Race ends the show with, does the game feel like it was made by ex-SMT developers to you? Which I know has kind of been a loaded question. And I'm going to go first because I've dipped into it a lot in my video, but also in conversation as well. I think if you aren't going into this expecting an SMT gameplay, you will definitely get lots of vibes in terms of the music and the story and the characters. Like, it's a very dark theme that you can, like, see where those roots came from. but just don't expect a Shin Megami Tensei like gameplay, and I would say you won't be disappointed. What about you, Kuro? Does this feel like it was made by SMT devs?
Not necessarily. If you never told me that this is made by SMT devs, I would have not guessed that. And I said that in the beginning of my review. If you go thinking that this is gonna be like a Persona or a Shin Megami Tensei game, it's better just to not have those expectations.
Oh my god, I hope on the back of the box it just has giant red letters from the makers of Shin Megami Tensei.
No, I think it's actually to his detriment that people think that, because I've seen a lot of negative comments on that, like, oh man, they left Atlas to make this game, or like, you haven't even played the game yet.
Well, it's a shame because like the game is selling it on who's making it, not the. It's weird because it's like I think in the West it's a lot more common to follow franchises you work on, whereas in like I think in Japan especially, no one thinks of Kojima as he's the Metal Gear guy. People think of him as, oh my god, that's Kojima. He makes really good stuff. I want to see what he does. Like, no one was really expecting Death Stranding to be Metal Gear 2. Whereas, like, when I saw the announcement, like, they announced before Monarch was officially announced, they said who was the staff. So obviously, if it's an RPG, you could assume that it might be like an SMT-like game, but I always really appreciate when, like, developers kind of step out of their comfort zone and are like, hey, we're going to take what we know, but we're still going to put an interesting twist on it.
Yeah, I don't know if they did that here. I think it's a good story and game. I just don't think that there's anything meriting mentioning Shin Megami Tensei game. Like, and then I got called out on Twitter the other day because on my post for my review, I hashtagged SMT5 on Persona 5. And I'm like, look, I do it because it's just, I feel like if you're a fan of RPGs and I only cover Persona and Shin Megami Tensei in my channel, then you may be interested in this game, But I don't necessarily want people to have that thing in the back of their head. So I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna play a Shin Megami Tensei game, or even trying to be a Shin Megami Tensei game. It never gave me those vibes. Just being frank.
No, I get that for sure. Cam, what about you?
Well, like, it's kind of complicated to me. Like, part of it does feel like if someone told me that an SMT person, veteran was made this game, I could see it. But like, I don't think that, because there are like kind of those things that we know from Atlas Games, SMT Persona, that are in this game, but not in the same way as like, oh, this is like just like SMT, or oh, this is just like Persona. It's not like that. But there are like bits and pieces of like DNA that feel like it is implemented into Monarch, but not in a way where I'm like, oh, this is just like SMT. Oh, this is just like Persona. But like, if someone said like, oh, someone from those franchises made this game, I could see that. It's kind of like this middle ground.
Gotcha. No, that definitely makes sense. Well, you two, I want to thank you for not only coming here and doing this with me. It was a fun to not only kind of do a review discussion, which I've not done in so long in a group sort of setting like this, but just to catch up with you guys, shoot the shit, and talk about the game. But yeah, so thank you for coming on. Thank you everybody for not only listening but giving out questions. So really appreciate all of that. But yeah, Cam and Kuro, if you guys want to go first. Cam, if you want to start, where should they find you? Where do you want them to stalk you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at CamFinalMix, and I have a Kingdom Hearts podcast, Unlocking Kingdom Hearts. It's basically us going, like me, Jonathan Dornbush from IGN, Alexa Ray, Korea, who you might know previously from like What's Good Games, but is now a narrative designer at Sledgehammer Games, and Kevin Diaz over at PlayStation Source. On YouTube. We're all like playing through the Kingdom Hearts series again. Some of us are experts of the series. Kevin specifically is a newcomer who hasn't played the series before, and we're going through each game, talking about what we love and don't love about the series. It's kind of like a podcast used to encourage people to play through the series for the first time or return to the series as if you haven't finished the series, or even if you just want to like play through the series again, and just kind of like celebrate Kingdom Hearts for better or worse. So episode 0 is out currently on like all your podcasting services, and episode 1 will be coming out soon.
I was just about to say, do you think it'll make it before the February cutoff? Time is ticking.
Will episode 1 come out by the end of February? No. Damn. It will not.
Breaking my heart on the Valentine's month on this, but I appreciate it. Also, remember, everybody, you have to click on the link to the IGN review of Monarch, and you have to write in the comments, man, that reviewer was really talented and handsome. I sure hope he does more reviews on IGN like that, because that's the only way IGN gives you more. You have to be commented on very positively only. It's the only way they bring you back.
Yep, that's 100% true. You can hear the seriousness in my voice.
and that is why we've not seen you on Podcast Unlocked in, I think, 9,000 years? We needed more comments.
They never bring me back there, I'm definitely not coming back this coming Tuesday, which that episode will already be out by the time this episode comes out, but that's definitely
if you're on there to talk about Destiny, I don't want to hear about it. So you better tell me you're not there to talk Destiny too.
I'm legitimately not there to talk Destiny 2.
Oh, thank God. You should talk about Monarch on it. That would be fantastic. Let me tell you about this game you can't play, guys.
I'll probably mention at the end, like, I wrote a review for Monarch. You got, like, it's not on Xbox, but
it's on PC, guys. Don't worry, you can hook an Xbox controller up to it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Kuro, where can people find you? Definitely not doing the same thing that I do every day, in and out of the internet.
You can find me on the Midnight channel on YouTube, and just make videos, talk about Persona and Shin Megami Tensei.
Now, what they should do for you is go to your Cyberpunk video and just only comment, where's the Fallout 76 videos, just to really confuse you. That's how you know that, like, that's the diehard fans who are going all over the place for it, so.
Yeah, there's a guy that commented on one of my really old videos. He's like, I subscribed for like this, but you got me into Persona. I was like, damn, that's crazy.
I hope he was subscribed for your Marvel's Avengers videos. That would be the best. I subscribe for Avengers, but I'm here for the Persona, so it's too late at this point. Now, Kuro. What's up?
Nope. Finish the stuff with Kuro.
No, I was gonna say, Kuro. If it was like not that long ago, I'm gonna feel really, really bad. When is the next time you're doing a podcast? When's the Café LeBlanc coming back?
I think I'm gonna do another one probably next week. I'm trying to do something else, but I don't know yet. I'm just waiting for more Persona 25th anniversary news. So I'm holding on that podcast. I'm like, when is it? When is it happening?
Aren't we all just waiting?
Yeah, because I don't want to have the podcast and then like have the news, because then I'm gonna have to make another podcast. And I'm like, I'm just waiting for this. And Atlas is just teasing us. There's just been a bunch of going on Twitter, and I'm like, I'm on the edge right now. I'm like,
honestly,
I need to know.
That's why I'm so glad I can talk to you two about this and not have to talk about the Soul Hackers countdown. That every time I think about that website, it just makes me mad. So I'd much rather talk about Monarch than a countdown to a countdown.
I really hope that isn't like. I think it's going to be a mobile game, if I'm being completely honest. But I really hope that isn't a port of the 3DS game that I spent like $80 to get a physical copy of. So,
you've willed it into existence now. Now that you've said it, you've willed that into that's what's going to happen.
I know, but I really hope it's not, because like it's just one of those things where I'm selfish. I'm just like, no, I spend money on the 3DS version. Don't make me have to buy the other version and waste that $80. But no, what I wanted to say for the listeners is that I apologize if you heard any barking during the podcast. That is my puppy that likes to bark at any random noise that it hears, and I live on the upper floor of an apartment. So whenever a door opens downstairs or something, she's just like, woo. So I really apologize if that came up at all on your guys' end through the podcast.
I think I heard it like once, and it was hilariously quiet. I will say this, though. Now that I know you live on the upper floor, and I know you are always trying to move to California because you hate yourself and hate having money, the idea of you moving just that room you're in right now out, I'm like, oh god. I don't want to imagine. I don't want to imagine what me moving all of my crap is like. I don't know what your house moving would look like. That seems like a Herculean effort.
Oh yeah, I know, right? Like I am very. I already told myself I don't know how much it costs. I'm sure it costs a pretty penny, but I was like telling myself like, if we move, like I'll box everything up, that's fine. But if we move, I'm hiring movers. Like I ain't dealing with. I ain't dealing with
my one thing I was stupid about when I moved here a couple years ago is I did it in one day. That was the mistake. I should have spread it. I was like, let's do it on the first day. Don't do that, kids. You're gonna hate yourself. I remember I was like sore for days. My back was killing me.
Like me and Spencer. I mean, you have like, do you have like an official like living library of Vita games? Do you have like every game?
I have an entire Billy bookshelf that is just Vita games.
But do you have a living library? Do you have like every game that's gotten a physical release?
Oh God, no, because that's a lot of shit. I'm not a full setter. Full setters those are mad people. They're crazy people. Crazy.
Man, like I mean, here's the thing. Like I think the Vita definitely didn't enough love, but like when I've seen your shelves of Vita games, I'm just like, that is some next level shit.
It is funny because when I tell people I don't have all of them, they're like, "What else is there?" But it's like the best part is like I have so many niche Asian-only games, and I'm just waiting, man. One of these days, I'm gonna just start buying all the weird patchy slot games no one ever asked for. But speaking of patchy slots, I got a patchy slot myself out here, so we got to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you sometime during this week to probably talk about the Soul Hackers announcement. That will not be its own podcast unless it ends up being actually good. But then we will see you next week for an actual episode, which will probably be about whatever the hell Atlas announced for the February announcement. So we will see you around. Thank you all for listening, and goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.